Here's what's so astonishing about that. So you or I don't have the power to subpoena money managers and brokerage firms. Only regulatory agencies do. The SEC or the OCC or people like that. So all they had to do was call DTC
Right.
and say, how much money does Bernie Madoff actually run in this supposed hedge fund? In fact, in 2000, Bernie Madoff himself was interviewed in jail, and he said, I finally gave the number to the SEC in 2006, and they never called.
The numbers to his alleged account. Well, they were accounts.
He gave them the DTC account number and said, he said he was astonished.
Yeah. He gave them to him on a Friday afternoon. He figured on Monday morning it'd be all over. Came in Monday morning, nothing happened.
I should correct that. The SEC examiner called, but she failed to ask the right question.
Apparently, from what I gather, and you've alluded to this, there were questions about Madoff all over Wall Street and all over Europe. And for some reason, nobody except Markopoulos and a few others ever went to the SEC with their questions. And in fact, Markopoulos said, I never have figured out whether it's Markopoulos or Markopoulos. I'm told it's Markopoulos. He said that to the SEC, you should talk to X at Goldman Sachs and Y at, I think, Credit Suisse, and do it without lawyers being present. For some reason, I guess the lawyers, tend to stifle people for fear of fraud or whatever, for fear of libel or whatever.
No offense, right.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned a huge number of people, and maybe you can just run through who some of them were. Credit Suisse, Societe Generale, Laura Goldman, Jack Nash, Rob Picard, James Newman, Archie Busan's boss. Who were these people? Because they had suspicions and they never told the SEC.
Look, there is no rule on Wall Street that if you come across a crook, you have to turn him in.
Okay.
There were also very serious ramifications for questioning somebody of Madoff's stature back then. Even in 2001, when I wrote the story for Barron's. He had been chairman of NASDAQ.
And the ramifications were?
You could lose your job.
Bernie would call up Goldman Sachs and
Sure,
complain.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the guys I interviewed for the article didn't want to be named. He's in the book. His name is Ken Nakayama. And, I owe Ken basically not only the original article, but the inspiration for the book. And Ken worked at Deutsche Bank at the time. He was head of research for equity derivatives. And he was the one who tipped me off to this hedge fund that never lost money.
Yeah.
Now, Ken could have faced some serious consequences for having his name used in the story. Here's another example. One of my sources at the time worked at Merrill Lynch in their alternatives department, which oversees hedge funds. He was terrified of talking about Madoff, but he was very worried for his clients because every time he went to do due diligence on Madoff, he got nowhere. Couldn't even get a visit to the office. So, but he didn't want to pull the money out because it turned out his boss at Merrill Lynch was an investor. So imagine you go to your boss and you say, boss, I think we should pull out of Bernie Madoff's fund because I can't figure out what he's doing and there's a lot of funny business going on. And I can't get anywhere on the due diligence. And your boss says, well, I'm an investor and see you later.
This excerpt is brought to you by the Massachusetts School of Law, the leader of reform in legal education and a leader in multimedia education for the public. To view the full interview and for a full listing of MSL's programs, log on to mslaw.edu.